When we were children, a summer felt endless. The days stretched wide and slow, like sunlight through a window that never faded. We didn't think about time. We lived in it, completely. But now, the years slip by like weeks. We blink, and months vanish. Another birthday, another new year. Time, once thick and slow, has thinned. And you start to wonder, is it just life getting busier? Or is something happening to time itself? We grow older, but time feels faster. And that feeling is almost universal. Whether you're 20 or 70, the shift is unmistakable. So what changed? This isn't just nostalgia. Psychologists, neuroscientists, and philosophers have all tried to answer this question. Why does time feel like it accelerates as we age? And the answers aren't simple. They don't lie in clocks or calendars, but in the way our minds process reality. Time is not just something we move through. It's something we construct, moment by moment, based on how we experience change. And the older we get, the more we stop noticing change. When you were 5, everything was new. Every room was taller, every object stranger, every emotion unfiltered. Your brain was constantly alert, constantly recording. But now, you wake up in a room you've seen thousands of times. You drink the same coffee, walk the same path, think the same thoughts. Your brain already knows how the story goes, so it stops paying attention. And in doing so, it records less. And that may be the secret, because the brain doesn't measure time the way a clock does. It measures time through memory. The more memories you make, the longer time feels. The fewer new experiences, the faster it seems to pass. So when life becomes routine, time collapses. That's why a single, vivid week in a new city can feel longer than a whole month at home. Why a quiet, uneventful year can vanish in hindsight, while one strange, unpredictable week sticks with you for life. Time hasn't changed, but the way you feel it has. If time is experienced through memory, then it isn't really about how long something takes. It's about how much happened within it, how full it felt, and that fullness depends on novelty. The brain pays special attention to what's new. It lights up, encodes the experience more richly, and stores it more deeply. Novelty forces the mind to slow down, to observe, to absorb. That's why the first day at a new job feels 10 times longer than your 200th. Why the first time you kissed someone, time seemed to pause. But now, entire relationships pass in fast forward. The more predictable your environment, the more your brain shifts into autopilot. It stops laying down fresh markers in time. And without those markers, memory thins. Time slips by, unnoticed. In one sense, this is efficiency. The brain is protecting energy. It's scanning for danger and ignoring the rest. But the cost is subtle. Days start to blur. Weeks compress. Years become shadows. Children, on the other hand, are overwhelmed by novelty. Everything is new. Even time itself is unfamiliar, not yet sliced into deadlines or routines. Their minds are constantly mapping, decoding, adjusting. And because of that, a single year in childhood can feel like an era. By adulthood, we've seen it all, or at least, we think we have. And in thinking that, we stop looking. We begin repeating days instead of living them. But here's the strange part. The time itself hasn't changed. Our attention has. And attention is what feeds memory. And memory is what feeds time. So in a way, we're not victims of speeding time. we're the ones letting go of the brakes. Now pause with that thought for a moment, because chances are you felt it too. That moment when you realize a whole month just passed and you can barely remember anything meaningful about it. Or the moment when a single strange afternoon felt bigger than everything else around it. If you've experienced that, or you found your own way of slowing time down, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear what moments in your life felt longer than they should have, and what moments slipped away too fast. Because this isn't just science, it's personal. We each build our own version of time, and we each watch it fall apart differently. Psychologists call this memory compression. The fewer significant moments you store, the shorter the stretch of time feels when you look back on it. It's why childhood summers seem to go on forever in memory, not because they were longer, but because they were richer. And it's also why, as we age, entire years can feel thin, like an underdeveloped photo, all outline and no detail. So maybe time doesn't just pass. Maybe it fades, if we're not careful. And maybe, just maybe, it can be thickened again. There's a strange kind of gravity in repetition. It pulls at your attention, softens the edges of experience, and begins to flatten time itself. Most of adult life is a series of loops. You wake up, check your phone, drink the same tea or coffee, walk the same hallways, think the same thoughts. And while that structure gives life stability, it also compresses your memory. The brain doesn't store a memory unless it has a reason to. And when today feels like yesterday, and yesterday felt like last week, the mind stops marking the days at all. The result? You look back and realize you've been moving, but not going anywhere. Like running on a treadmill that quietly erases its own steps. It's not that the time passed faster. It's that you weren't in it. Not fully. You were functioning, but not recording. This is why routines, even the healthy ones, can lead to time collapse. Now, this doesn't mean you need constant stimulation or a new city every week. It simply means that without variation, time becomes invisible. One study found that people remember periods of their life with greater clarity when they were undergoing change, starting a new job, moving, ending a relationship. Even difficult transitions were remembered more vividly than calm, repetitive ones. Not because suffering makes time richer, but because change makes the mind present. We remember presence. We forget autopilot. But there's more to it than just routine. Time doesn't only compress from repetition. It bends with emotion. When you're afraid, time crawls. When you're in love, time flies. When you're grieving, the days blur together into a fog. When you're anticipating something, even an hour can stretch like a lifetime. This isn't a poetic metaphor. It's psychological fact. Emotional intensity alters your perception of time. That's why trauma can feel eternal while it's happening, but strangely inaccessible afterward. Why moments of awe or beauty feel timeless, yet unforgettable. The clock ticks evenly, but the mind does not. And the older we get, the fewer emotions we allow ourselves to fully feel. We learn to manage, to moderate, to stay steady. And while that may help us function, it comes at a price. Emotional flattening. And with that comes time flattening too. Think about it. When was the last time you felt something so deeply it changed your sense of the day? Not just a reaction, but a full, immersive emotion. It's rare, and the older we get, the more rare it becomes. Because we've learned to stay ahead of our feelings, to contain them, tame them, label them before they overwhelm us. And that's good. but it's also dulling. And when the emotions dull, the days shrink. They become outlines, shadows, easy to forget. So maybe the speeding of time isn't just about age. Maybe it's about how much life we allow into our experience of time. Because every moment is shaped by three forces: novelty, emotion, attention. When those fade, so does time. Not in quantity, but in quality. And that might be the real danger. Not that time goes faster, but that it loses its depth. And one day, you look up and realize a year has passed. But it didn't feel like a year. It barely felt like a month. And yet, there it goes, gone. As we grow older, time doesn't just feel faster. It begins to lose resolution, like an old photo, fading around the edges. The strange part is, nothing in the external world is accelerating. Days are still 24 hours long. Years still take 365 turns of the earth. But internally, the structure of time begins to collapse. This collapse begins in the mind, not in the world. Think of memory like a recording device. Not one that tracks everything, but one that selectively archives what it thinks matters. In childhood, everything matters. You're a blank slate, a clean page. So the mind writes everything down. You remember the feel of carpet under your hands, the texture of your first backpack, the smell of your first school, the exact shape of your cousin's laugh. Why? Because you didn't know what mattered yet. So your brain saved everything, just in case. But by adulthood, your brain thinks it knows what's important. So it gets picky. It records less. It compresses what it keeps. And that's why entire years as an adult can feel like a few scattered highlights with long, blurry stretches in between. It's not that we're living less. We're just storing less. And stored experience is what gives time its weight. Here's where it gets stranger. The proportion of time also shifts. When you were 5, 1 year was 20% of your life. That meant it felt vast, like a huge stretch of your total existence. But when you're 50, a year is only 2% of your life. Psychologically, it feels smaller, less significant, and so it passes faster. This is called the proportional theory of time perception. It doesn't explain everything, but it shows why time feels slower early on, even when the days are just as long. It's not just about how full your memory is. It's about how your mind frames the years that pass. We don't just measure time by duration. We measure it by meaning. The more firsts you experience, the richer the timeline becomes. But with age, many firsts become again. And again doesn't anchor memory like first does. You remember your first love more vividly than your 5th. Your first apartment more clearly than your current one. The first time you saw the ocean, not the last. First is encoded deeply. Routine barely registers. And aging, for many people, is a transition from a life of firsts to a life of repetition. Unless we break the pattern. That's the twist here. We can't stop aging, but we can disrupt repetition. We can still experience novelty, not by chasing thrill, but by paying deeper attention. We can still feel firsts by seeing familiar things through new eyes. We can still shape memory by noticing the moment we're in, because the mind doesn't record what passes. It records what you were awake for. And most of us are sleepwalking through time. That's why a single mindful afternoon, one walk, one conversation, one moment of presence can stretch out across memory like a beam of light in the dark. It's not that time slowed down. It's that you woke up to it. And maybe that's enough. We can't stop time, but we can change how it feels. We can stretch it, not with effort, but with attention. We can slow it, not by resisting, but by returning to the moment we're in. Time doesn't disappear because it hates us. It fades when we stop noticing it, and we forget to notice when everything feels the same. So the next time you feel a day vanish, ask yourself, when was the last time you did something for the first time? Even small things matter. A different path, a new question, a quiet pause before reacting. Because novelty creates memory, and memory gives time its weight. We may not control how fast the years go, but we can control how much life we put inside them. So maybe that's enough, not to hold on to time, but to walk with it, awake,